Hey everyone, Merry Christmas. Already that is drawn some of you in and pushed some of you away. Making this video, I know it's going to hurt slash offend some people that I care about. Certainly not my intention. But I watched a video today from a completely secular source on a completely unrelated topic. And they were talking about how in our culture today, everyone's afraid to say anything about anything because somebody might get offended. The truth is, Jesus said things that hurt people, but he was never trying to hurt people. Jesus knows the truth will set us free and we'll be free indeed, but sometimes that liberating, ripping the chains off process is painful because there are things we're holding on to that we think are true, and letting go of them hurts. So what I want to talk to you about is that every year, without fail, there are people in my circle who rant and rail against Halloween and rant and rail against Christmas. And every time I cringe inside, and I wonder how many other people are seeing this and thinking that's what Christians have to offer to the world. But that's not really what I want to talk about, whether or not that's what we have to offer to the world. What I want to talk about is why we're doing that, why we wouldn't be doing that if we understood the story. There's a strong undercurrent in Christianity that everything that isn't in the Bible is pagan. Paganism is a broad stroke term for any and all beliefs that fall outside of what they consider godly and biblical. So do you know the roots of Christmas are pagan? Do you know the roots of Easter are pagan? You know the roots of this and that are pagan? First of all, I want to make this point absolutely and abundantly clear. If you believe that God created everything, then paganism is the root of nothing. God is the root of everything. Paganism is Satan's twisting of everything God has done that is good, right, and true. He's a counterfeiter, he's a manipulator, he's a liar, but at the root of everything that he tells a lie about is actually truth. It's just manipulated, twisted, perverted. So let's take Christmas, for example. Actually, let's start with Easter. Easter's an easy one. So Ishtar, pagan goddess. Anyone who does 5 minutes of research can find that one out. So, Easter bad, pagan, blah, blah, blah. But don't you find it odd, coincidental, strange, that Easter falls at the same time of year as Passover, or the time of year Jesus died and rose? Now, there's some calendar manipulations, and sometimes they fall on the same weekend, and sometimes they don't. But the coincidence is kind of striking, don't you think? That Satan would institute a holiday based around fertility and this and that, that's at the same time as Jesus died and rose? Could it be that he knew that if Jesus was the focus, he would lose all of his influence and power over us? So that every time there's any kind of event that would put the focus on Jesus, he creates an alternate event to take the focus away from Jesus. And then Christians come along behind that and say, see, this is all Satan doing this, and they throw everything out. And where's Jesus the focus? He's not. In fact, the focus is more on Satan and his power and his lies and his manipulation and his this and his that. Everybody leaves the table thinking about anything and everything but Jesus. So if there's a pattern of Satan replacing the genuine with the fake, with creating a diversion to get us away from what's actually going on that would lead us to Jesus, if that's the pattern, what's Christmas about? those of you who've done any research, I actually had a friend in high school, awesome person. If you're watching, love you. Been impressed with you ever since I've known you. Used to be a Christian, as far as I know right now is not. And one of the things that really disillusioned her was when she found out that December 25th has nothing to do with the Bible or Christianity. And from there, the thoughts start rolling, right? Well, if this is a lie, what else is a lie? Jesus was actually born probably late September, maybe early October, somewhere in that time frame. The Bible doesn't tell us a day. That alone should tell us something. So why December 25th? And if you go back into the pagan roots, man, Satan has been setting up these pagan mythologies of virgins having a son long before Jesus came, which is another reason people say, oh, Christianity is just another pagan ideology, it's just a myth. No, Satan has had the Bible in his hands and been able to read it and study it, and he's known God since before that, and he's been working and watching and trying to figure out a way to win. So knowing that Jesus was going to come, because that's the first promise Jesus made to Adam and Eve, that he was going to come and crush the serpent's head. Knowing he was going to come, that the seed was going to be born, first to the line of Seth, and then Noah and Shem, and so on, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Knowing that, he's waiting and watching and doing everything he can to either make sure the baby's never born, or if he is born, to cast shade on the whole thing by making it seem like it's just another pagan event among many others. So before I lose you, and I hope maybe I did already, I hope not. December 25th, if you get out a calendar, is 9 months before the end of September, which means that Jesus was conceived at the end of December. And you can actually take the Bible. We're not going to do it in this video. If you want, you can get a hold of me and I can send you some sources. If you just take the Bible and you track the timeline from John the Baptist being born, his parents, when they conceived John and when he was born, John was 6 months older than Jesus. And if you do the timeline between those two births, Jesus was conceived at the end of December. And if you understand the Bible and how life works according to the Bible, his conception is more important than his birth. His conception was announced before his birth because he was here before he was born. Ask any woman who's ever been pregnant, and their baby's with them before they're ever born physically. So Satan calculated when Jesus was coming, and he invented a pagan diversion, again to take our attention away so that Jesus isn't the focus. And that's all it is. So when we as Christians run around lifting up Christmas trees and trying to take some obscure text from the Old Testament that talks about shaping a tree with an axe and make that into a Christmas tree and it's pagan and this and that and the other thing, whether true or not true, whether kind of true at best, where's the focus? Like, we are the ones as Christians who are supposed to be, number one, following Jesus ourselves, and number two, leading other people to him. Talking about whether or not a tree decorated in your house is a pagan symbol or not has nothing to do with following Jesus or leading people to Jesus. It's sad and frustrating to me that we as Christians are known far more for what we're against and what we won't do and what we think bad of than we are for uplifting Jesus. And if the only power for change in the world is knowing Jesus and loving Jesus. How is that ever going to happen for anyone if he's never lifted up? Jesus said, if I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me. So now I'm going to lift Jesus up. Okay? So we got the pagan nonsense out of the way. If you're still here, you deserve to hear the rest of the story. When Jesus was born, well, shortly after he was born, the Bible says wise men came from the east. It's an English translation. Men came from the east. They went straight to Jerusalem, to the palace, to where the king is. And they asked, where is he who was born King of the Jews? We have seen his star in the east, and we have come to worship him. Who are these people? Well, what did they say? We came from the east. We saw the star. We've come to worship him, who's born King of the Jews. What did they bring? Gold, frankincense, myrrh. There's all kinds of theories about who these people are. Most of it's just conjecture. It's made up. Some say they were connected with Balaam and the talking donkey. They lived in Ur or Babylon, or we don't know exactly where any of them lived. They came from the east. But they knew who he was, and they were expecting him. When they came to Jerusalem, the place where he was born, and the people he was born primarily to and through, they weren't ready. They had no idea what was going on. So you have these heathen foreigners from some far-off place who know exactly when he's coming, who he is, what he's coming for, as we'll see. And the people who are supposed to know don't. Again, who are these people? They came from the east. That's the biggest clue. There's a little known chapter in Genesis, chapter 26, I believe. It's 25 or 6. You'll find it. Sarah dies. Abraham and Sarah. Sarah dies. Abraham remarries. Woman's name is Keturah. We don't know much about her. In that chapter, it lists that she's his wife, and it lists the sons that they had together and the grandsons that were born to them. It's a little known fact. We stop at Isaac, right? Abraham and Sarah finally had Isaac, which is awesome. And then we forget about the rest of the story. It's very short, but there's some names in there. Midian, the most well-known. Sheba. Dedan. There's some others. Ishbak, Shua. There's others too. My memory fails to remember them all at this point. Who are they? Does it matter? I mean, these are details in the Bible that if you're first reading it through, you'll never notice. Never. Second time, you will never notice it. Third time, you won't notice it. But after a while, you start wondering, hey, wait a minute. Why is this here? Who are these people? And then you read further into the story, and you're like 400 years into the future, and Moses kills an Egyptian slave taskmaster, realizes the fallout that's going to come from that, and he runs off into the wilderness, ends up in the land of Midian, the descendants of Midian, the son of Abraham. And if you go back into that obscure little few verses in chapter 25 or 26, it says that Abraham and Keturah had these children, but these sons weren't the sons of the promise. So the inheritance and the blessing that was passed from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, well, it belongs to Isaac. The promise of the seed is coming through Isaac. So the land of Canaan, the land of promise, the land that God showed to Abraham that his descendants would own, that was given to Isaac, the promise to Isaac. And it says he took the other sons and he gave them gifts. He loved them. Wasn't kicking them out or nothing. And he sent them eastward to the land of the east. And if you look at the Bible map, you have the Sea of Galilee in the north, where Jesus did a whole bunch of miracles and walking on the water and all that stuff, storm on the lake, fishing. It's where the disciples are mostly all from. And then there's the river, Jordan, that runs straight south and goes into the Dead Sea, close to Jerusalem's a little bit north of there. And that river running north and south is the dividing line between the west, the land of Canaan, and the east, where Abraham sent his other sons. Midian, south and east. So Moses runs away from Egypt 400 years after Abraham, lands up in Midian, meets a family there. Father's Jethro, and he's the priest of Yahweh, the same God Abraham worshipped. Well, of course. Of course it's the same God. It's the same family. And even though Abraham preserved the land of Canaan for Isaac and his descendants, the promises of the seed to come who would bless how many nations? All the nations. That was given to all of his children. And from generation to generation to generation, they taught their children. There's a deliverer coming. He's going to be born in the land of the west, where our great uncle Isaac is from. Abraham, our father. Someday he will come. When he comes, he will bless all the nations. So I'm going to read for you. All right, so I'm going to read for you. The end of the last few chapters of the book of Isaiah, phenomenal, man. Prophecies after prophecy after prophecy. Awesome stuff. Most famous, of course, 53, where Jesus is the Lamb. Isaiah 60. Arise, arise, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon you. For behold, darkness covers the earth, and deep darkness the people. But the Lord will arise over you, and his glory will be seen upon you. The Gentiles, everybody who's not from Isaac's line, shall come to your light. And kings, wise men, to the brightness of your rising. We've seen his star. Lift up your eyes. You're just making, that's pretty sketchy. Well, keep listening. Lift up your eyes all around and see. They all gather together. They come to you. Your sons, family, shall come from afar. Your daughters to your side. Then you shall see and become radiant, and your heart will swell with joy, because the abundance of the sea, another word for the many, many peoples, will be turned to you. The wealth of the Gentiles will come to you, gold, frankincense, myrrh. Or you're just making that up. Verse 6. The multitude of camels shall cover your land. The dromedaries, camels, of Midian, of Ephah. His name's back there, Genesis 26. Sheba. Remember the Queen of Sheba who came to visit Solomon, seeking God and his wisdom? Family. Abraham. They're all there. They will bring gold, incense. You say the myrrh is missing. Well, frankincense and myrrh are both incense. Two different kinds. They will proclaim the praises of the Lord. We have seen his star in the east. Where is he who was born King of the Jews? We've come to worship him. Generation from generation to generation to generation. My sons, my daughters, there's a deliverer coming. He's going to be born in the land of Uncle Isaac, but he's going to bless all the nations. When he comes, we're going to go see him. See, Christians, we have a lot better things to talk about than Halloween and Christmas trees, Easter bunnies. We have a lot better things to do than point out the evils of what Satan's up to or not up to. Jesus said, if I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me. No, December 25th is not when Jesus was born, but it's very, very close to when he entered the womb of Mary, and she wondered what in the world God was up to. Jesus was a full-grown adult, and she was still trying to figure out what God was up to. Wouldn't it be better if we all talked more about what God's up to and tried to figure out what an amazing God he is and what exactly it means that he will bless all the nations? Why don't we talk about that this Christmas? Merry Christmas.